at verse 1 and conclude in verse 22. Y'all follow along with me today. Everybody got Acts 24? I say you got Acts 24? No American Standard reads on this line. After 5 days, the high priest Ananias came down with some elders and with an attorney named Tertullus. And they brought charges to the governor against Paul. And Paul had been summoned. After Paul had been summoned, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying to the governor, since we have through you attained much peace, and since by your providence reforms are being carried out for this nation, we acknowledge this in every way and in everywhere. Most excellent thing to get, he's flattering him with all thankfulness, but that I may not weary you any further, I beg you to grant us by your kindness a brief hearing. For we have found this man a real pest and a fellow who stirs up dissension among all the Jews throughout the world and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. And he even tried to desecrate the temple. And then we arrested him. We wanted to judge him according to our own law, but Lysias, the commander, came along and with much violence took him out of our hands, ordering his accuser to come before you. By examining him yourself concerning all these matters, you will be able to ascertain the things which we accuse him. The Jews also joined in the attack, asserting that these things were so. Now when the governor had nodded for him to speak, Paul responded. He'd given his defense. Knowing that for many years you've been a judge to this nation, I cheerfully make my defense. Since you can take note of the fact that no more than 12 days ago I went up to Jerusalem to worship, neither in the temple, nor in the synagogue, nor in the city itself did they find me carrying on a discussion with anyone or causing a riot. Nor can they prove to you the charges of which they now accuse me. But this I admit to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, I do serve the God of our fathers, believing everything that is in accordance with the law and that written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men cherish themselves, that there shall certainly be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. In this view of this, I also do my best to maintain always a blameless conscience before God and before men. Now, after several years, I came to bring alms to my nation and to present offerings in which they found me occupied in the temple, having been purified without any crowd or uproar. But there were some Jews from Asia who ought to have been present before you and to make accusation if they should have anything against me, or else let these men themselves tell what misdeed they found when I stood before the council, other than for this one statement, which I shouted out while standing among them. For the resurrection of the dead, I'm on trial before you today. Stop right there. I like to put a tag on this text because this is a courtroom scene. I don't put a tag on this text, if you don't mind today, and speak to you from the subject. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. It was a trial of the century. was a trial that lasted 11 months. It was a trial that involved over 115 witnesses. It was a trial that was made into a mini-series involving Cuba Gooding Jr. It was a trial that not only was turned into a mini-series, it was a trial that was made into a documentary by ESPN. It was a trial that because of the trial, 67 books were authored because of that trial. It was the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. You remember the trial, don't you? People were riveted to their television sets because it was the first trial ever to be televised. If you weren't riveted in your seat, you often watched commentary from the news shows that talked about the day's events in the trial. It was a trial that lasted 11 months. They paraded witnesses. The prosecution made its case. It was time for the defense, and the defense had almost 53 witnesses within themselves. And then after 11 months, the defense rested. And after the defense rested a couple of days later, it was Johnny Carson giving his closing argument. And when he gave his closing argument, what Johnny Cochran did with this LA defense team, tried to do their best to dismantle, destroy, and discredit every fabric and fiber of the evidence, of a mountain of evidence that was before them. And Johnny Cochran didn't do a lot of DNA dialogue. He didn't do a lot of jargon and scientific slogans. What Johnny Cochran did was just point to the evidence and just simply said, it doesn't make sense. He put on the cap, the knit cap. When he put on the knit cap, he said, I don't care who I am. Y'all been with me for a year so now, and even though I have a knit cap on, I'm not disguising myself. I'm still Johnny Cochran with a knit cap on. And O.J. Simpson, he has a big head. People know who he is. They know he lives on and he has a knit cap on. He's still O.J. Simpson with a knit cap. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So the glove that he had, and Rocky had, that Mark Furman brought over, it doesn't make sense. And you can tell he was even in the court while you were here. He tried on the glove, and the glove didn't fit. If I close today, I want to talk to you because the thing is, Johnny Cochran says, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit. And if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. They gave a verdict not too long after the deliberation, and they interviewed one of the jurors after they gave him a not guilty verdict. One of the jurors was interviewed, and they asked, why did you come to a conclusion so quickly? How did you deliberate so quickly? She simply said, it didn't fit. And if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. When I think about that trial, that courtroom, I'm reminded of this courtroom. Because in this text, there's a courtroom trial. Paul is on trial, the first trial he's involved in, where they brought this case before a guy by the name of Felix. And what happened is the Jewish leaders came down into Caesarea, made a 60-mile journey, either by foot or by horse. I don't know how they got there, but they got down into Caesarea, and they got a hookup by the guy by the name of Tertullus. He was the best lawyer in town. He was an orator. He was eloquent. He had all the phrases and the clauses down. He was a Jesse Jackson of his day. He knew all the articulation, and they said, we gonna hire this man because he comes highly recommended. So he presents his case before this fellow by the name of Felix. And he says the problem with Paul, number one, he's a hell raiser.
Yeah, right.
He's a pest.
Yeah.
Number 2, he's a heretic.
Yeah.
And number 3, he said he's just a plain old troublemaker.
Yeah.
And then he gives this little short, brief accusation. Paul gets up and says, I want to take each and every accusation and flip it on his head.
Yeah.
I want to dismantle, destroy, and every aspect and every accusation before me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, Felix, that before I get through today, you're going to discover that it doesn't make sense. You're going to discover that it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And Felix, if you don't mind today, I'm going to borrow some terminology from Johnny Cochran. If it doesn't fit, Felix, let's go through this because this text, there's more to this text than meets the eye.
Yeah.
The reason I read this before you is because I want to give a context of what we're going to be dealing with today.
All right.
Because Paul is in court, and I told you that these people are coming from Caesarea. They're coming down to Caesarea.
Yeah.
They make this long journey because they want to put Paul on trial. He was in protective custody last week as Pastor dealt with it. But now he's brought out of the jail cell, and now he's standing before a guy by the name of Felix. Felix was the governor. And they hired this hired gun, this attorney that has become highly recommended.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they get Tertullus there, and Tertullus is summoned, and he brings his charges, and then look at what he says. He says in verse 2, after Paul was summoned, Tertullus began his accusation to the governor. He says, since we have through you attained much peace, listen to this, and since your providence reforms are being carried out for this nation, we acknowledge this in every way and in everywhere most excellent Felix. Now Tertullus knows what he's doing. Because Tertullus knows, in order, because I don't got the facts on my side, I got to try flattery. And even though he doesn't have the facts, he does have flattery. See, I know it's flattery because even though he's standing before Felix, and the council is standing before Felix, they can't stand him. They're mad at him. They don't like him because he was a rough guy. They don't like him because he was brown. He was a brown noser. He brown nosed his way to the top. He was an ex-slave that now became in a position of power. And can I tell you, that's the worst thing to have. Someone that was an ex-slave and now in a position of power. And he misused and abused his power, and Felix is a governor that they couldn't stand. Tertullus knows that. Because I can't get him with the facts, so I got to get him with flattery. Because you know what? Flattery, you know what flattery is, though? Flattery is something you say in front of a person's face that you'll never say behind their back. So you see, y'all used to gossip. There's a difference between gossip and flattery, you know what I'm saying? Gossip is something you'll say behind their back, you'll never say in front of their face. Flattery is something you'll say in their face, you'll never say behind their back. So now I got the facts. I got to use flattery. And can I contemporize this and make it contemporary? He said, because of you, Felix, we have peace and we have providence. He said, Felix, I know you're the big ball and shot caller in town, and I know that you ran on the platform that you're going to be the law and order governor. Watch out. And I know that you're going to keep the peace and all this killing and all this stuff and this fighting and this insurrection and all these plots and all this picketing and all this rioting. If we elect you, we knew that you're going to be able to handle it. You'll quiet down all this mess around here across the country. And because this guy by the name of Paul is rioting, I know that you are the one that can put the riot down. Because, Felix, I know that you are law and order governor.
Yes,
And all I got to do is just leave it to you. I know it's flattery because they couldn't stand him. I know it's flattery because they're trying to act like he's all that, but Felix was crazy. He was crazy because he's on his third wife now. He had a problem because his wife Drusilla, now he's going to bring her back and act Drusilla was a young girl when he got her and he took her from somebody. I ain't got the facts. So I got to flat. I know they can't stand it because he had a bad reputation. This guy was so jacked up. Nero, which was a Caesar at the time, had to pull him to the side. Now Nero is crazy himself. Now you got one crazy person pulling another crazy person to the side. Now Nero is pulling you. If Nero is pulling your coat down, you got to be crazy. He said, "You the law and order president. You're the one that can bring in peace and prosperity. You have a track record, and everybody knows. Everybody knows you across the country, Felix, that you're the peace and the prosperity guy. Look what it says, everywhere." Y'all see that in the text? I ain't making it up now. He said, "I know that you all have a bag of chips because everywhere and in every way, you've been a great, excellent person." He said, but then he started trying to be like Deacon Carl. He said, "I ain't going to be before you long." He said, "But when you hear me out, you hear my accusations." And look what he says. He says in verse 4, "But that I not weary you any further, I beg you to grant us by your kindness a brief hearing. For we have found this man to be a real pest." Y'all see that? In other words, he's a cancer. The idea is that he's a plague. He's a disease he's a cancer that needs to be cut out. In other words, what he's saying is this Paul fella ain't nothing but a hell raiser. He raises hell everywhere he goes. He said, and to keep the stuff down, if you gonna keep peace, you gotta deal with this hell raiser. He said he does it everywhere he goes, all throughout the Roman Empire, all throughout Jerusalem. He's a hell raiser. Not only is he a hell raiser, he's a heretic. Look what it says. He says that he not only is a real pest and a fellow who stirs up dissension among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader, y'all see that? Of the sect of the Nazarene. I'll get to that in just a second. And not only is he a hell raiser and he's a heretic, he even tried to desecrate the temple. And we arrested him. He said, "We weren't going to judge him according to our own law, but we can't put forth the death penalty. We want to put Paul on death row. And we can't do that as Jews. That's why I brought it before you. And I know that you, the Lord, are present. You want to keep this stuff down." They said, "If you don't mind, and as I close, I want you to deal with this heretic, this hell raiser, and this desecrator." I close my case. Now, can we deal with this? Because Paul stands in his own defense. He said, and tell us, he said, "Now, Peter, you can examine this stuff yourself. You don't need me. Just ask some folk around here." Then it's time for Paul to raise it. Look at verse 10. "When the governor had nodded for him to speak," talking about Paul, Paul responded, look what it says, "Knowing that for many years you've been a judge to this nation, I cheerfully make my defense." Look what it says, verse 11. "Since you can take note of the fact that no more than 12 days ago, I went up to Jerusalem to worship." He said, let's take this first accusation that you have against me. Number one, you say I'm a pest. He said, Phoebe, I got to tell you that I'm not a pest. What I was doing was pure. He said, you say I'm a pest, you say I'm a hell raiser, but I came in humble. And you know what I like about Paul? But even though these folks said that about Paul, it couldn't stick. He said this, he says, I wasn't a hell raiser in the temple. I wasn't a hell raiser in the synagogue. I wasn't a hell raiser in the city. Can I just deal with that for just a second? He said, I wasn't a hell raiser in the temple. Can I just talk to some folks?
Go ahead.
All right.
He said, I wasn't a hell raiser in the temple or the synagogue. I hate to tell y'all this.
I'm all ready. Okay.
You know what the problem we have?
All right now.
We got a lot of hell raisers. Y'all know what hell raisers are? Folks, that their only intent is not to get along with stuff, but just be messy folks. Y'all know what hell raisers are? I know they ain't here at St. John, but most churches I can point out the hell raisers. All right, folks, don't do nothing, don't work in no ministry. If they do work in ministry, it's all kind of complaints, how they ain't doing this, they ain't doing that, they ain't doing what they supposed to do, just a hell raiser. And if this accusation was made against you, that you are a hell raiser, would you be acquitted? Can you get up there and can you make the same claim that Paul makes?
That's good.
Are you a hell raiser, by the way? I was trying to come up with an illustration, Pastor Taylor, and I said I pulled up hell raisers in the church. I Googled it, Brother Boy. And when I Googled hell raisers in the church, Hellraiser 3 came up on YouTube. You remember the movie Hellraiser? It was the third part of Hellraiser. You know the guy that got the spikes and stuff coming out of there? And the reason it made a Google connection is because when I clicked on the YouTube, Hellraiser was on his way into the church. Because many people think that's all calm, cool, and collected, but there's some folks that are hell raisers that is coming to the church. Hell raisers that have come into the pulpit. Paul said, I ain't no hell raiser now. Get that straight. He said, because if you look at my life, it's consistently pure. It's consistently peaceful. He said, I want no hell raiser in the church. What you talking about? That don't even go to, it's not consistent with my character. He said, not only am I not a hell raiser, watch this. He said, I'm not a pest, I'm not a plague. I'm not a cancer that needs to be cut out. The reason I know that is because not only was I not a hell raiser, watch this, Pastor Taylor. He said, I didn't hang around with hell raisers. I know y'all ain't gonna like this kind of preaching. He said, you didn't find nobody around me raising hell. I wasn't disputing nobody. I wasn't talking about nobody. He said, you can check it out for yourself. He said, I didn't even have time enough. I only been here 12 days. And a couple of those I've been in protective custody. Felix, see what you listen to, Felix, is some fake news. That's the problem with the fake news. When everybody tweeting out about it, you're looking at what's on Instagram and Facebook and Vine and Twitter and all that. That's no problem. All that stuff is fake news. But if you listen to the facts and get some witnesses around here, you notice they ain't got none. He's not a hell raiser. He's not a hell raiser in the synagogue, in the temple. He's not a hell raiser. Watch this. in the city.
All right.
In the city, he's not one raising hell. I wasn't acting a fool. See, folk can play for a little bit on 2 hours on Sunday morning. Can't they? We can't see that you are hell, you. Because you shout and praise the Lord. We can't see that you raise a lot of ruckus.
All right, now.
Because you dance and shout. But can I just follow you into the city? Can I just go with you to Papa Noel? Can we just follow you on your job? And see that you clocking in late and leaving early? Are you a hell raiser in the city? He said, no. Am I in the text today? He said, I ain't got enough time to do it. Watch this. He said, neither in the temple, nor in the synagogue, nor in the city itself did they find me. I wouldn't even carry on a discussion with folks. He's not one doing that. He said, I don't want to carry on a discussion with anyone or causing a riot. You don't want to see me with no picket signs. You don't see me doing all that stuff. Talking about all lives, Christian lives matter. I wasn't doing none of that stuff.
All right.
He said, nor can they prove to you in the charges of which they now, he said, they don't even have the facts on their side. He said, let me tell you what I came to do. He said, when I came to Jerusalem, I came to worship. I didn't come to be messy. I didn't come to be disruptive. He said, I just came to preach the gospel. I came in purity. He said, now, what they talking about me being a pest, if you look at the evidence, Felix, it don't make sense. If you look at the evidence, Felix, it doesn't fit. And Felix, if it doesn't fit, you must agree. Well, is that all? No. He said, not only am I not a hellraiser or a plague or a pest, he said, I'm also not a heretic. Look at the verse. He said, because y'all say that I follow the way. He said, but I do admit to you that according to the way which they call what? A sect. Y'all see that? In other words, they say we are a splinter group. So when you talk about a sect, that's automatically a negative connotation. In other words, they're putting a claim on Paul that Paul is a heretic because he's a ringleader of a cult. What he's preaching ain't in the text. What he's preaching is this foreign gospel. And if you keep letting him preach this stuff, he's going to raise hell in the community, and there ain't going to be peace in Jerusalem or in the Roman Empire. So Felix, what you need to do is you need to squash this right now. This preaching stuff he's doing.
Yeah.
Paul said, what? He said, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a heretic. Because what I'm talking about is not based upon no heresy. It's based upon history. Now, what do you mean? He says, look what he says. He says in verse 14, for this I admit to you that according to the way which they call, that's the Jesus followers. Y'all remember Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the light? The people that come to Jesus are those that are followers of the way. So it says, if that's what you're talking about, the followers of the way, let me tell you something. That's not heresy, that's history. Well, let me show it to you, because he says, I know it's heresy, not heresy, but it's history. He says, because they call it a sect, but I do serve, watch this, the God of our fathers. In other words, I ain't coming to a new God now. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that's the God I serve. And so you can tell heresy if they don't have the same God that you serve.
Yeah.
They got multiple gods. Polytheism.
All right.
The tree can be a god.
Yeah.
Muhammad can be a god.
All right.
If you call him Elohim, that's fine. He said, no. He said, I don't worship no other God. I still worship the God of our Father. It's not heresy, it's history. Watch that. He said it's not heresy, it's history because it's the same God. Also, watch this, the same text.
Yeah.
All right.
Y'all see this? He said, I'm not preaching heresy because it's the same text, because it's the text, watch this, of the law and written.
Yeah.
Y'all see that? In the prophets. In other words, the text I'm using is a text we've always been using. In other words, the text I'm using is a text of the law and the text of the prophet. In other words, it's the Old Testament text.
Yeah.
I ain't twisting the text, I'm just interpreting the text. Watch this. He says, and here's how you got to know if something is heresy or something in history, is do you have another Bible? Do they have another text? Some people got 3 or 4 different Bibles. Mormons got the Book of Mormon. That's another text. The Pearl of Great Price. That's another text. Some people have the New World Translation of the Scriptures. That's another text. The Quran. That's another text. He said, when I'm preaching, I ain't got the Quran up here, I ain't got the New World Translation, I ain't got the Book of Mormon, I ain't got none of this going on. He said, I'm using the same God, same text. So someone told you come here talking about, well, I got another book that you need to read that can enlighten you. And it's not one of these 66 books. So sorry, baby, I need another text. What's this? He says also, I know I'm not heresy because what I'm preaching is written. What? He said it's written. Y'all see that? Y'all think I'm making it up. He said it's written in the law and the prophets. He said I can give you chapter and verse for it. I ain't gotta be subject to your subjectivity. In other words, he said, I ain't going around talking about the Lord showed me this in a dream. He said, I ain't going around talking about this in my spirit. He said, it's in the text. He said, you tell me I'm a heretic, I just want to prove to you that it's not about heresy, it's about history. He said, I know about history because y'all talking about this Jesus fella, he's a leader of the way. And I'm following him, but I got to show you that the reason I know it's in the text, is written in the law and the prophets, is because when you examine the law and the prophet, you'll notice that they point to Jesus. You'll notice that if you interpret them in the right context, you'll discover that what Moses was talking about, I just talked to. But Joshua was looking for, I'm now looking at. And what these verses talk about is something that's not new, it's already new. Well, what are you talking about, Paul? I'm glad you asked, because the Bible says in Micah 5:2 that this fellow by the name of Jesus would be born in Bethlehem. And you know that it's fulfilled in Matthew chapter 1 verse 20. The text said he was born. Wish I had something like that. In Bethlehem. Genesis 49:10 said that he would be from the tribe of Judah. Matthew 1:1 it talks about his lineage and genealogy. And he comes from the tribe of Judah. In Isaiah 7:14 he said, you shall, the girl shall give birth and call him Emmanuel, God with us. Can you go to Luke chapter 1 verse 32, you discover that they called him Emmanuel. In Psalm 69:8, it said he was rejected by his own people. And then Matthew said he went into his own. And his own received him not. He said when he went in from judgment hall to judgment hall, he'll be silent before his accusers. Isaiah when he went into the courts, he didn't say, like my grandma say, a mumbling word. He said he's going to be crucified with two criminals, Isaiah 53 and 12. He said in John 15, he said when they hung him high and stretched him wide, there was a thief on one side and a thief on the other. Can I tell you, Paul, Felix, what I'm talking about is not heresy. It's Zechariah 12 and 15. In John 19:28, it said when they hung him, they pierced him on his feet and in his hands. He said in Isaiah 53, he said when he's buried, the Messiah, he's going to be buried among the rich. Y'all know he had a borrowed tomb, don't you? From a rich man. From Joseph of Arimathea. He was buried among the rich. Psalm 16 said the Messiah will be resurrected from the dead. Can I tell you one? Friday, he died. And Saturday, he stayed in the grave. And when I look at the text of all the Gospels, that he was resurrected to new life. Can I tell you he's going to ascend unto heaven? Psalm 24 said he'll ascend to heaven. Matthew 28 said after he got through preaching his meeting on the mountain, he ascended up into heaven. He said he ascended on the right hand of the Father. When Stephen was stoned and left dead, see that he looked up and saw Jesus sitting at the right hand of the Father. This is not heresy. This is history. He said, I can tell you, Felix, what they say doesn't make sense. What they say, it just don't fit. And if you don't mind, people, I gotta tell you, if it don't fit, you must have quit. They're not only heresy, it's not heresy, but it's history. Because now I want to say the same text have the same Jesus. He said, now let's deal with this thing called the desecration of the temple.
All right.
He said, they say I came in and I am accused of. Y'all see that?
Yeah.
He said he tried, not that I did, but I tried to desecrate the temple.
Yeah.
Well, how did I try? He said, see, the reason, Felix, that they say that is because they listen to the fake news. Because if they saw me in the temple, they know that I didn't desecrate it.
All right.
Let me tell you where they're getting this stuff from. It's because I was out in the city with a guy by the name of Trophimus.
All right.
And Trophimus was a Greek and he wasn't allowed into the temple. But later they saw me in the temple and they assumed.
I'm out.
I wish I could preach like I want to.
Go ahead.
But you know what you do when you assume. If you don't know, go ask Pastor Penn to get paid. I can't talk like that. But you do know what you do when you assume. They just assume that it was a Greek that was with me in the temple. But they ain't got no facts. They just making an assumption.
Yeah.
He said, because when I came in, let me tell you, I wasn't doing no rioting, nothing like that. He said, I didn't come to give him hell. When I came to the temple, I came to give him some help. Can I show you where I see that in the text? He says, let's start verse 15. Having hope in God, which these men cherish themselves, that there shall be certainly resurrection of both the dead and the righteous. In view of this, I also do my best to be blameless, constant before God and before men. Verse 17. Now after several years, I came, watch this, not to bring hell.
Yes. All right.
I came to bring some help.
All right.
Watch this. He said, here's what I came to do. When I came to worship and I came to help. And you notice how those two things go together? Worship and helping. Y'all catch that on the way home. Because I came to bring alms to help my nation. In other words, I just wasn't shouting, I was doing some giving. He said, when I came to worship, I just wasn't saying hallelujah or some doodle-doo too. He said, not only did I bring some hope, I brought some help. Look at that. All the offering that I had been gathering among the churches for the poor in Jerusalem, that's what I came down for. I came down to help some folks. had some folk that had the mentality that Paul had. He's like, I came to get some help. I didn't came to get no help. He said, when they found me occupied in the temple, having been, watch this, purified. So when I came in right.
Yeah.
So this accusation that I desecrated the temple, I didn't do nothing. I came in pure. I came in right ceremonially. I did the stuff right. Right? Because in order to be a good Christian, I got to be a good Jew. Because everything that came out of Judaism ultimately points to Jesus Christ. That's right. He said, I came in pure. He said, and the accusation was that I brought a Greek and tried to integrate the temple.
All right.
What nothing wrong with it in the first place. He said, I tried to bring some other folk, but some folk have this mentality that birds of a feather need to flock together. But he said, I came in purified. He said, and I went with a crowd, an uproar. There were many from Jews from Asia. He said, now, here's the problem, Felix. If anybody saw me, tell me to come on.
All right.
If anybody saw me desecrate the temple, where are they?
All right.
If you saw me doing something that wasn't right, and y'all saw it everywhere and in every way, you can't find one witness because they weren't interested in the truth. Because they weren't even consistent with their own theology. Because nobody makes an accusation without 2 or 3 witnesses. Without 2 or 3 witnesses, every word should be established. He said, you're not even bringing in any witnesses. He said, they ought to be, verse 19, they ought to be present before you and to make accusation if they should have anything against me, or else, lest these men themselves tell what misdeed they found when I stood before the council. If they have anything, let them bring it. Other than this one statement. And here's the problem. Let me tell you why I'm in here. It ain't because of no politics. Not that I'm a Republican or a Democrat or independent.
All right.
Not because I'm a certain religious denomination. Church of God in Christ, Baptist. It doesn't matter. He said, the reason I'm here is because I preach the resurrection of Jesus. Now let's cut to the chase. Because that's the reason I'm here. The reason I'm here is because I preach the resurrection. Now that may be a problem for some folks, but if you won't find me guilty of preaching the resurrection, I'm guilty. If you won't find me guilty for saying early Sunday morning, he got up, guilty. You gonna tell me that Friday night I preached a sermon about how he was dead all day Friday?
All right.
Friday night, Saturday morning, early Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hand. You gonna condemn me for that, Felix? I came to tell you, that does speak. But can I tell you, he said, if that's what I'm gonna try for, I'm guilty. He said, Harry Truman said that I didn't give him hell, but I just told him the truth and it seemed like hell. And the truth is that when they checked early Sunday morning, the tomb was empty. I don't know about you, but if you're gonna be convicted, you ought to be convicted for preaching the resurrection. See, Paul was in a courtroom. And Paul had faced his accusers, but I looked at the OJ trial and there's a courtroom there. I looked at this trial and there's a courtroom.
All right.
But can I tell you, there's going to be another day in court. At the end of the resurrection, there's going to be another court. And just like this court, there's going to be a judge. And just like this court, there's going to be a prosecuting attorney. And then just like in this court, there's going to be a defendant. And I ain't going to talk about you, but can I talk about my own life? called the ultimate judge. And can I tell you, there's going to be a prosecuting attorney. And he's going to have all the evidence against you. He said, well, when he was 3 years old, he thought a bad thought. And I'm going to accuse him because of that. I'm guilty. At 7 years old, he stole a Snickers candy bar from Earl Williams grocery store. And I got his documentation right here. I like right there and say, I'm guilty. There's some places I shouldn't have gone. And he said he shouldn't have gone here, he shouldn't have gone there. He said, well, I'm guilty. He said there's some things he shouldn't have thought, some lustful thoughts, some things he shouldn't have done. He said, well, I'm guilty. He said there's some ways I should have done by omission or commission or disposition.